Hello and welcome to At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. The Economic Opportunity Act of 1964 created the Office of Economic Opportunity, which was designed to take federal funds and use them locally to fight the war on poverty. And that's how we came to know the Act of 1964, the War on Poverty. It was announced January 8th, 1964 in the State of the Union address by President Lyndon Baines Johnson. And we are now at the 50th anniversary of that act. We're going to discuss the progress, or maybe some areas where we haven't progressed, in the next half hour here on At Issue. And to do that, we have Don Jackson with us. Don is the current president of the local chapter of the NAACP here in Peoria, and a past 10-year president of the state.
That's correct, yes.
And we thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure.
And McFarland Bragg is here. McFarland is president and CEO of the Peoria Citizens Committee for Economic Opportunity. Community Action Agency would be a term that many people would be familiar with, part of the PCCEO.
Correct.
Before we get started with the conversation, a couple of comments here. First, Deborah White, who's the executive director of Mid-Central Community Action in McLean County, attempted to drive here today. We will miss her conversation. She got halfway here and pulled off the road after seeing too many cars in the ditch, because we recorded this a week ago when there was a snowstorm. When this airs, it's probably going to be sunny and 45 degrees.
We hope.
We hope.
Secondly, every year I speak, or I read to the kids in the 4th grade class at Keller School in District 150. And again, this year I had that opportunity. I learned a lot by reading Wimpy Kids, one of the Wimpy Kids books, which I had not had the opportunity to do before. So grammar is not a strength of that book, but it's certainly entertaining. And I'd like to say hi to all the children who are in Mrs. Shaw's 4th grade class at Keller School. Thank you for the opportunity. And Mrs. Shaw, I look forward to seeing you next year reading at Keller School again. And there you see all the kids' signatures. Every year they sign the little form that I have here. And so Carson and Jenna and Madison and Kelsey and Montarian and all the rest of you, thank you for entertaining me. And with that, let's get down to the act. January 8th, it was announced. It wasn't too much longer before it was passed. In general, just overview, what kind of progress have we made in the past 50 years with regard to the war on poverty?
Well, in my opinion, very, very little. In fact, maybe we need a second-generation war on poverty, because it continues to grow in this country, and certainly in our community. So while the effort has been there over the years, we still have a lot of people in poverty, and because of the economic circumstances in this country today, the middle class that used to be contributors towards people of who were in poverty are now find themselves in poverty as well. So that's just my opinion, but I believe that the facts will bear that opinion out.
And McFarland.
I think if you look at specific examples that created the problem that we have today, and that basically was the Great Recession that started in late 2007, early 2008. Caterpillar downsized a significant number of individuals, but people don't take into consideration the ancillary impact that had, because a lot of the small businesses that had contracts with Caterpillar to provide parts, to provide other services, when Caterpillar downsized, they went by the wayside. So those individuals who, as Don said, were middle-class families taking care of paying taxes, taking care of their communities, they are now unemployed rather, in seeking assistance from community action, seeking assistance from local area food pantries, because they don't have enough income to stretch their money to provide food for their families through the end of the month. So that number has increased significantly. And just some basic information, between 2012 and 2013, the number of individuals who are considered in poverty in Peoria has increased by 2,000.
By 2,000 people in 1 year?
Yes.
You've talked about the change from 2009 to the current year. Mm-hmm. If we had not had the acts of that occurred in 1964 and 65, we'll talk about there's 4 acts that occurred back then. Where would we be?
I think that those numbers, the number that increased from the percentage increase from 2011 to 2012 would probably be triple, and that's on a low number.
Let's talk about those acts just to make sure that everybody is aware of the Great Society and the 4 main acts that occurred in 64 and 65. They were the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, which we've already referenced, the Food Stamp Act of 1964, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, and the Social Security Act of 1965. And before you say Social Security was in place in the 30s, yes, it was, but that Act of 65 created the Medicare and Medicaid program. So without those, where would we be?
In deep trouble, as far as as far as I'm concerned. People that need that help, well, I guess in reality, one of the ancillary problems that we'd be facing, I think crime would be up, and I just learned that, with the exception of murder in our community, crime is down in all categories. But I think it would be up because people, it's the old theory, survival of the fittest. People would find ways to feed their families, to protect them. And but for programs like food stamps and but for programs like assistance with utilities that we operate at the Community Action Agency, those people would be in dire straits today. And thanks to the foresight of Lyndon Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson, while we're not better off today, at least people have a social network or something to fall back on to assist them in times of this nature.
Let me turn to McFarland again and ask, in terms of your local operation, you have a LIHEAP program,
yes.
Energy assistance. Mm-hmm. Where are you financially there?
We had actually our energy assistance sign-up day for February yesterday. In the past 2 years, we've served over 10,000 households just in Peoria County. When I met with staff a week ago, we anticipated we would have enough funding to provide services to individuals through the end of February. And unless the state gives us some additional dollars, we're going to be out of money at the end of February.
And that would be the half-year mark for that
yes,
program?
Correct.
And then also, one of the programs that came out of this legislation 50 years ago was the Head Start program. Where are we with Head Start funding?
Due to sequestration, we actually lost 5.27% of our funding effective July 1 of 2013. Thankfully, with the Omnibus Budget Act of 2014 that was approved and signed by the President, we will get those dollars back, which means we will restore 35 slots, 35 Head Start slots, 6 early Head Start slots. We will be able to bring back 2 of the education staff that we had to lay off. We will be able to bring back 9 of the 18, we funded 18 slots, training slots for parents. We had to downsize 9 of those. We'll be able to bring those back. So we haven't received the specific information in terms of how that's going to be applied. But when I met with them the last week of January in Washington at our leadership conference, we know that those funds are being restored. We're just waiting for specific instructions on how that's going to get done.
I want to talk about workforce development in just a moment, look at adults, but let's continue the conversation about Head Start.
Well, Mac has certainly outlined in a very detailed manner the technicalities of the program and financially where we're at with it. But you also got to look at the value of Head Start to this community. We are training young people at a very early age to be able to go into higher education and do good things for this country. Training that they would not have but for Head Start. And so when I look at the youngsters that are in the program and who graduate from the program, the future bodes well for us as far as those youngsters are concerned. And we all know education is the key to getting good jobs in this country, to surviving and serving your families. And so we teach them the value. When I say we, in the interest of full disclosure, I also am on the board of directors at the Community Action Agency. But we train them at a very, very early age to understand the value of education and what it's going to mean to them and their families in the future.
Well, let's continue that to the later years in terms of high school. Some school districts don't have vocational education at all. District 150 in Peoria does have some vocational education. Is that helping in your estimation?
I think it will help, although, you know, I took a tour through the program up at Woodruff, and while they have created some very good facilities up there, we got facilities for training a lot of barbers and a lot of cosmetologists. But this community practically is already oversaturated with those kind of jobs. The unfortunate thing, the training for jobs that I think are necessary, like training for electricians and plumbers and plasterers and that sort of thing, to either get into the building trades, the road building trades or the home building trades, is severely lacking as far as I'm concerned. It's a good start. But you know, years ago in this community, we had those programs. They used to have a program at Central where youngsters were trained while in high school to build houses. They were trained to be plumbers. They were trained to be electricians. They actually built the houses. They had an automotive
right on Main Street.
Right, program as well. And they were taught to repair the cars of those times. At Manual, they had the printing. In fact, Lynn Eunice, who's a good friend of mine, I'm told came through the printing programs at Manual. So while it's a good start, I don't think it's where it should be.
We talk about workforce development, and people are trained for certain skills, and then those jobs aren't there. Yet we hear people like Mr. Parsons down at Excel Foundry, south of Pekin. He can't find the proper candidates for jobs at his place.
I think there's been a disconnect between the business community, workforce, and the school district. And hopefully now with the initiative that came out of the Focus Forward Central Illinois, those entities have been meeting. They've been planning. The workforce network is being reorganized. It's going to be administered for the most part by Illinois Central College. And so I think you'll see the training programs that come out of our initiative going forward are going to be tailored to meet the needs of those industries that are actually looking for individuals.
You know, if I could add something to that, I recall years ago I worked at the Urban League, and I was the associate director to create jobs in the community. And they used to have a program, I don't know if it was under CETA or what it was, but they encouraged employers to hire people that needed to be trained for their particular jobs. Right. And then the employer was given financial incentives to do that, bring people in, and if you needed to train them to run a robotic machine, you did it on the job, and they could pay a lower wage and the government would subsidize that wage. We need to go back to programs like that. When you've got a manufacturing firm like that needs employees, and we got all these people that need jobs, somehow the marriage has to happen. And that was a program that would fit well in that circumstances today.
Let's stay on the job discussion in terms of minimum wage. I believe the state is $1 over the national average. The national, McFarland, 7.25.
7.25, right.
And Illinois is at 8.25. And of course, the president just recently, to a limited number of new employees, raised it to $10.10. So what's your take on moving the minimum wage to $10.10, or another number if you prefer? And should it be done incrementally? Should we jump?
I think we need to move toward it like yesterday, because we've been at, even in Illinois, we've been at $8.25 for the last 3 or 4 years. If we just take and I'll give you an example. If we're just using the $8.25 that is the minimum wage salary right now, a person would have to work 66 hours a week to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment at fair market rate in Peoria. So 66 hours, that's a bit.
You know, and I agree with McFarland. I think it's something that needs to happen today. This is not a figure that was just, snatched out of the thin air. At $10.10 an hour, it just puts individuals slightly above the poverty line today. And so we're not bestowing upon them, wealth that's going to allow them to take summer vacations with their families and that sort of thing, or get into that 1% category. This is enough for them to just get above the poverty line. What also has to happen, as I've said before, is that it needs to be indexed so that 5 years from now we're not having this same discussion. In other words, gradual increases based on the consumer price. I don't care how it's indexed, so long as it's indexed so that it increases and we keep people above the poverty line. What does that do? Well, it benefits the whole community because people finally have not only enough to put food on the table, not only enough to pay their rent or pay their mortgage, but it also gives them a little bit of excess income that they will spend in the community. They will spend the full $10.10. And that's going to, in my judgment, benefit the rest of the economy. They'll go to merchants and buy shoes for their kids or buy some new jeans and that sort of thing. So to me, it has nothing but a positive effect, and I can't understand the reluctance of our politicians in Washington to raise it.
What about the argument that the small business owner, the person who owns a fast food restaurant, what have you, says, well, I'm just going to employ fewer people. I'll pay the $10.10, but I'm going to have to figure out how to manage my store, my operation, with fewer employees.
I think realistically, he or she may do that for a minute, but I think when they do the analysis, they're going to end up losing money because there's only so many hours in a day, and one person can't do the job that 3 people had been doing previously. So that'll change. And kind of following up on Don's point, raising the minimum wage to $10.10 would provide an annual salary for an individual of about $20,000 in Peoria. The median income in Peoria is $47,000. So there's still $27,000 under what it takes to live in Peoria.
And not only that, that argument is used over and over and over again, but it's not factually backed up. Not one person has come forward to show that there's been a decrease in jobs as a result of raising the minimum wage historically. And in fact, those who favor an increase in the minimum wage, some to $12 an hour, have provided the facts to show, as I mentioned before, it improves the economy, which means that there are more jobs for people. And in fact, perhaps if we create more jobs, some of those people who are from the middle class that used to have good jobs would move out of the restaurant jobs and open those jobs up for young people to operate. So there are just no facts to support that conclusion that have ever been presented as far as I know.
For perspective, the poverty level for a family of 4, nationally speaking, is $23,550 currently. Let's talk about the progression of the act. We started the conversation with the Economic Opportunity Act of '64. Then in 1973, I believe, President Nixon signed legislation that eliminated the Office of Economic Opportunity, which had overseen many of those programs. Now, many of the programs were maintained, but under different agencies, so there was a change there. Then in 1996, President Clinton signed the Work Responsibility and Job Opportunity Act, which basically changed the concept of welfare. And I believe his quote was something to the effect of, this has changed welfare as we know it. looking back over that period of time with the Nixon changes, with the Clinton changes, has that been a good thing, a bad thing, a neutral?
Well, I don't know. I haven't really studied it, but I can tell you this, looking at it from one favorable standpoint, there's no question that there probably were people on welfare at that time who were weeded out as a result of the welfare to work aspect of that legislation. I think that was a good thing. But on the other hand, looking at it in today's society, until we expand the jobs that are available to people, I don't know that we're helping the situation as much as we can. We need a jobs program in this country so bad that, it's just mind-boggling to listen to our representatives, our elected officials, talk about what they are not doing, and that is creating the jobs program. Since this administration came into office in 2009, we have not had a jobs program to benefit this country. Our roads are in terrible shapes. Our bridges are in terrible shapes. Our infrastructure in every city is in terrible shape. We could put millions of people to work if we would just come up with a jobs program in this country. And then some of the poverty issues, in my judgment, will take care of themselves.
Does trickle-down economics, we've talked about it for 30 years, if I recall, has that had an impact in terms of, Don's been talking about providing jobs, trickle-down economics, does it provide jobs in your estimation?
In my opinion, it hasn't done that. If you take a look at, the companies that have downsized and shipped their operations to Mexico, to to China, where they're paying people, maybe $2 an hour, if that. It hasn't trickled down, and the focus has been so much on creating wealth for a small percentage of individuals. It may have trickled down for those 85, but for the rest of us, it's not done that. The thing that's always troubled me about what Mac just said is that the offshoring of jobs. If we don't have jobs in this country, who's going to be able to buy the products that are being offshored to China and places like that? They can bring them back into this country, but who's going to have the income, the ability to buy those products in this country? So, to me, it's like shooting yourself in the foot when you do when manufacturing entities do those kinds of things.
Some things everything is dynamic. It's always changing. So when we look at the programs established in 64 and 65, those have been impacted by other events that have occurred. For instance, the high school graduation rate is up since 1964, a good thing. More women are working than in 1964. Families are smaller, which I suppose in one way is good in terms of financial support for a family. So I guess my thought is there isn't a single bullet approach that will work in trying to fix this over a long period of time. We should be fluid in the way we address these issues.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think a perfect example of that is the changes that have occurred with respect to service delivery in the Head Start program. One of the beauties of the Head Start program is its comprehensive serviceness in terms of serving the entire family. But we now have specific outcomes that we are required to document. We have an evidence-based curriculum that we're working on. We do assessments of our kids 3 times a year. We actually aggregate that data to be able to better articulate to that kindergarten teacher, these are Johnny's strengths and weaknesses in 11 different domains. Our curriculum and our outcomes are tied to the state's early learning outcomes, tied to the district's early learning outcomes, and now with this new Common Core Standards of Education, we're required to make sure that all of those outcomes are aligned. We also now have parent, family, and community engagement outcomes. So we have to work with that individual family to find out what their goals are and help them move toward it.
And with that, we'll have to consider continue the conversation after the cameras take a little siesta because we're out of time. Don Jackson, local NAACP president, thank you so much for joining us on that issue. McFarland Bragg,
thank you.
President CEO of PCCEO, and we thank Deborah White for her attempt to drive here in a snowstorm from Mid-Central Community Action. She was unable to make it all the way, so we hope that she is safe and sound. One final thought, in 2012, $916 billion spent on poverty. About 100 million people in America were beneficiaries of those dollars. We'll be back next time with another edition of At Issue. Please join us then.